I was 69 and I handed my apartment keys to a couple with a new baby, Erie, Pennsylvania. By that afternoon, I had nowhere in America to sleep and a one-way ticket to Manila. I was flying out there to get married. His name was Densio. He was 71. 13 hours over the water. Then the doors opened at Manila. He wasn't at arrivals. His sister was, Onsing, 61 years old, gray blouse, standing at the rail. She had a shoebox held flat against her stomach with both arms, like somebody had told her not to drop it. She didn't hand it over. Not yet. He had a house in Lipa, down in Batangas, in the Philippines, about 2 hours south of that airport. He'd painted the back bedroom a green I wouldn't have picked out myself, and he sent me a photograph of that room with his thumb in the corner of it. I had one job for 31 years, front window of a family clinic on Peach Street. I said other people's names out loud into a waiting room. Mrs. Kowalczyk, the Ferrante boy, 60, 70 names a day, 31 years of it. 32 if you count the year I was part-time, and I don't count it. And in that arrivals hall, under the sign with the arrows on it, nobody said mine, Diane. Nobody in that hall had any reason to. I stood there with my bags and waited for somebody to come and get me. Onsing got close enough and said it. She said it wrong. Diane. She's never once said it right. I've never corrected her and I'm not going to start. Then she opened the box. 2 rings, folded into a square of tissue the jeweler had creased in thirds. The receipt, stapled. Under that, a form from the city hall, folded in 4. His side of it was filled out in ballpoint. His name, the whole thing, Gaudenzio, which nobody ever called him. His birthday, his mother's maiden name. He'd pressed down hard. You could see it on the back of the paper. My side was blank. He was waiting on me to sit down next to him and fill it in with my own hand. You go in together over there, both of you, at the same window. He died at about 3:45 in the afternoon, Lipa time. I was somewhere over the water with my shoes off and a blanket on my knees. Something in his head let go. An aneurysm, the doctor said. Onsing had to write that word down on an envelope to say it to me later. He was standing at the back door with a cup of coffee. He sat down on the step. That was all of it. I had met that man in person one time in my life. 11 days in October in Erie. 4 suppers. But 3 years is 3 years. The doors kept opening and shutting and the cold kept coming out of them. I had a green room 2 hours away that a dead man had painted for me. I had a box, and a woman I'd only ever seen on a phone screen, standing there. Onsing told me the car was outside. Come, Po, she said. So I went. I still turn that over at night. I could have stood at that counter, and bought myself back home for whatever it cost. My son would have wired it. I had a sister who'd told me twice not to go. But I never got my phone out of my purse. It was right there in the front pocket. I mean, right there. I got in the van. It was one of those vans where the seats don't go back. What I didn't know, riding south in the dark with that box on my lap, was that there was a woman in Dubai. Nobody in that house had told her I existed at all. His older brother came to Erie in the 70s and worked the docks on the lake. He was a patient of ours for years and years. Blood pressure first, then the sugar, then his foot, and you know how that goes. He was just terrible about appointments. He'd no-show and then call in a panic. But I had his chart memorized because I'm the one who chased him. Densio called from Lipa the first time at 2 in the morning our time. He'd counted the hours wrong. I'd gone in early to open up, and the phone on the front desk rang in an empty building, and I picked it up. That's what you do. He wanted his brother's numbers, nothing else. He wanted the printout read out loud to him. He had his own pen and paper on the other end, and he'd say them back to me. Slow. He'd been a foreman on a coffee farm, and he ran things by writing them down. That went on a year and a half. First, it was just numbers. Then it was numbers and the little bit at the end. Then it was mostly the end part, and I quit taking those calls at the window. I'd take them in the supply room, sitting on a case of copy paper. He was stingy with words. He'd let a silence sit a long while, and I'd be filling it, because I fill silences. A front window does that to a person. But then he'd say one flat thing I'd think about for a week. His brother had a stroke and moved down to his daughter in Ohio. There were no more numbers to read, but he called anyway, 2 days later. He came to Erie that October. He was there for his brother, and I got 4 suppers out of it. At the lake, he stood at the rail with his hands in his coat and said, "This water is the wrong color." He was smaller than he sounded. He'd told me he quit smoking 4 months back, and I believed him. But then I found the pack in his jacket at the steakhouse. I put it back and didn't say anything about it. A man who lied to me about cigarettes. I sold the apartment anyway. I wanted to be married. Not settled, not looked after. Married. It's the smallest, plainest thing about me, and I have never said it out loud in that house in Batangas. He asked me in July on the phone, and there wasn't any speech. "Come and marry me," he said, or "come and don't marry me, but come." That was the whole speech. I was standing at my own sink with the phone against my ear and the dishwasher going, and I said, "Okay." Then it took 11 months to actually do it. It takes that long when you're my age. Everything has a paper attached to it. I sold the apartment for $61,000. I signed it away on a Thursday, and by Friday morning, it wasn't mine anymore. I did not arrive at that airport poor, and I didn't arrive rich. That money's in a bank in Erie, and it's still there. My sister Charlene cried on the phone in a way she hadn't done since our mother. "You've met him one time," she said. "Diane, you have met this man once." She was right. My son Rodney lives down in Charlotte, and he did something worse than fight with me. "Okay, Mom," he said, "send me the flight number." 4 words and a request for information. But I'd rather he'd hollered at me. I gave the clinic 6 weeks. On the last Friday, they had a cake in the break room with my name across it in blue gel, and the girls sang. A woman I'd worked beside for years hugged me and told me I'd be back by Christmas. She wasn't being mean, she just couldn't picture it. 3 days before I flew, he said something on the phone I didn't understand until August. At the Newark counter, a man told me no to my face, and there was no talking my way past it. I had one ticket, Newark to San Francisco to Manila, one direction. I took the overnight bus out of Erie to get to that counter, with my suitcases in against my knees. All that time I'd been telling everybody I bought a ticket with no return on it. The young man at the counter had a shaved head, and he was very polite. He took my passport. He typed. "Ma'am," he wanted to know, "how are you leaving the country?" I told him I wasn't. He typed some more. He turned the monitor an inch toward me. The computer was saying it, not him. He couldn't put me on that airplane. And it wasn't the Philippines saying it, it was his airline, and they're the ones who'd fly me back at their own cost if I got turned around at the far end. So they want to see something. Anything. A booking out of the country, inside the 30 days they were going to stamp on me. I did not know that. 2 suitcases and a carry-on with the marriage papers in it. There was a line behind me by then, a stroller and a man sighing. I'm 69 years old, and nobody has ever told me I can't get on something. I bought it on my phone. Right there at the counter, on airport Wi-Fi that kept dropping. My hands were just doing that thing where they won't hold still. A seat out of Manila over to Singapore on the 29th day. $74. It didn't have to take me home. It only had to take me out of the country, and that was all the man wanted. It took a few tries, maybe 4, because the card kept getting kicked, and standing there I realized I'd just paid good money for a lie. The young man told me, "Sorry, ma'am, it's not me, it's the rule." Then he tagged my bags and told me to have a nice trip. $74. I've never flown it. Newark to San Francisco. I don't remember any of. The long one's the one that matters. 13 hours, or near it. I've never checked the number. I sat next to a nurse going home to Iloilo for her father's birthday. She showed me pictures of a dog, and I showed her the photograph of the green room. "Oh, that's a nice green," she said. She meant it. 9 hours into that flight, he was already gone. I ate a chicken thing off a tray. I slept with my mouth open. But about 40 minutes out, I went into that little bathroom and put on lipstick. I fixed my hair with water off my fingers. And then I looked at myself in that mirror. 69 years old, doing my hair over a sink in an airplane bathroom. The immigration line took almost an hour. The officer asked me a couple of things, stamped me 30 days, and didn't look at that booking at all. They didn't care at that end. Then the sliding doors, the wall of people, the heat coming in around them. I looked for his face a long time. Longer than made sense, really. There were men with cardboard signs and a whole family with balloons. I turned in a slow circle with a luggage cart, and then I thought, he's parking. He's in the bathroom. He's probably on the wrong level. He'd been dead since the afternoon, but there I was doing arithmetic about parking. The ride down to Lipa took better than 2 hours, and we just didn't talk much. Onsing's son-in-law drove. Patak, they call him. He works on anything with an engine in it, and he kept checking me in the mirror the whole way. Somewhere on that tollway, Onsing reached over and put her hand flat on my forearm and left it there. Not patting. She left it there a couple of miles and then took it back. We came into Lipa around 1 in the morning. Every light in that house was burning, and there were people out in the yard on plastic stools. A dozen of them. The crying was done by then. I remember the stools more than I remember the people. He wasn't there. He was at the funeral home being taken care of. But he came home the next afternoon at 3 o'clock, in a white casket with a glass over the face. That was the second time I ever saw that man. Through glass, in a front room, with an electric fan turning back and forth over him because of the heat. They put me in the green room that first night. I didn't look at anything in it until the third day. There was a new mattress still in its plastic at the foot of the bed. The old one was his mother's, and he'd decided it wouldn't do. There was a mirror screwed to the wall at my height, not his. And on the little table there was an electric kettle, still in the box, with the tag on it. I'd told that man once, in the middle of talking about something else, that I drink tea at night and can't sleep without it. He bought a kettle. For the first time it went through me that he'd been getting ready for months. When somebody dies in the Philippines, they pray 9 evenings in a row in the house. Pasiam, it's called. 9 evenings, no skipping, and afterward everybody eats. Then you count out 40 days, and there's another day at the end of that. Then a year, 9 evenings in that room, plastic stools carried in from 3 houses, and more stools out under a tarp in the yard. A rosary going in Tagalog at a speed I don't know how anybody follows. I couldn't. I knelt with them, every night. My knees are 69 years old. I knelt on a tile floor with a folded towel under them. Onsing put that towel there without asking me. That's what you do. I couldn't follow any of it. I'd just catch the name of a saint, and then it was gone again. But I moved my mouth a little, because it felt worse not to. A woman in a green cardigan came every one of those evenings with a thermos of coffee. The local kind, Barako, strong as anything, and I drink it twice a day now. She'd pour it into the same white cup and set it down by my foot. But on the third evening she asked me, "Is it true that in America you can't hear your neighbors through the wall?" The fourth evening is the one I keep coming back to. They read a list. Partway through, the man leading it reads out the family, who they're praying for, and who's praying. Just names. It was written out on a piece of paper. Onsing was in it as Leoncia, which I'd never once heard anybody call her. And they read mine. Not Diane. Somebody had written it out right, my whole name, in with theirs, in a list I couldn't have read if you'd handed it to me. For 31 years, I'd been the voice that says your name in a room full of strangers, out loud, so you know you're expected. Nobody had ever done that for me. I got my hands over my face and I did not make a sound, and I could feel the tile through the towel. I asked Onsing about it months later, and she said, "Aye, that's just the list." Then she asked, "You want rice?" Onsing left a white blouse folded on the end of my bed that evening, ironed, not hers. I thought it was laundry that had wandered, and I put it away in a drawer. The praying ends, and then it's just a Tuesday. There's a machine that runs about 10 days, and it carries you along, and then it stops. The stools go back to the neighbors' houses, and suddenly there you are, in a house with nothing in it to do. They buried him on the 5th day, in the middle of all that. I don't know why then. In that family, the praying doesn't stop for the burial. The burial happens inside it. Onsing told me later that some families wait and start the 9 after. On the 11th morning, I woke up in a green room in a house in Batangas. The house was empty. Everybody had gone to work. I just lay there. What am I doing here? Who's supposed to feed me? That's what I kept thinking about, of all things. Do I pay rent? I didn't know if I pay rent. On the 12th day, I got Petok to drive me to the airport. I told him I had to see about my luggage. That was a lie. I think he knew it was a lie because he didn't ask me anything the whole way, but Petok asked questions about everything. I remember standing outside that departures door for 40 minutes. I had my passport in my purse. I had money sitting in a bank in Erie. But there was a guard by that door watching me stand there, and after a while I got cold under the vent. 40 minutes. I never went in. I stood out there and thought about my old place back home, with somebody else's baby in it. And I think what stopped me was that I couldn't stand the idea of that woman being right about Christmas. I walked back to the parking lot, and Petok was asleep in the driver's seat with his mouth open and the radio on. I stood there a minute and just looked at him. I got in and said, "Okay." He said, "Okay, Po." He started the car. You've probably done something like that yourself. Stood somewhere 40 minutes and then not done it. So I stayed. I don't know that I ever decided to. I just didn't go, and then it was the end of the month. Onsing's house is concrete, painted a color I'd call pink and she'd call orange, with a tin roof. When the rain comes, you have to stop talking. And it comes at 4 in the afternoon, near enough you can set your afternoon by it. It comes down off Malarayat and kicks the dust up, and then it's gone. Lipa sits up a ways, so it's cooler than Manila. But cooler than Manila is still a place where I sweat through a blouse before 9. My first week, Mingay next door told me not to stand in the near corner of that yard at that hour, and then went back in her house without saying why. The neighbor on the left is Mingay. She's a big woman. The fan in the green room quit early on. That was his fan. He'd bought it for that room along with everything else in there, and I carried it out to her step. She had it apart in no time. The trouble was one little wire, thin as a hair, but she wouldn't take money. I offered twice. The second time she gave me a look like I'd said something dirty. She's got a son in Cavite she talks about, and I've never seen him. The power goes out there. Not constantly, but it goes. Brownout is the word for it. The whole street drops and the fans wind down, and suddenly the neighborhood makes the same noise at once. This long, ah. The first time, I was standing in his kitchen with his kettle in my hand and no way to boil it. Then everybody comes outside because inside is unbearable, and you just sit in the dark with people you can't see. That night, a woman down the row asked in English, "How long is the American staying?" Nobody answered her. A radio came on 2 houses over, and that was the end of it. Somewhere in that week, I quit doing the arithmetic on how long I could stay on what I had. I don't know when I quit doing that. I just noticed later I'd quit. Onsing's grandnephew Nitoy is 16. He keeps a rooster in a crate out back that he thinks I don't know is a fighting bird. I do know. We have an arrangement where I don't ask. That bird is named after a boxer. But he's never asked me anything about America, and I find that restful. I bought the black dress at the market in Lipa from a woman with a folding table and a rack on wheels. She held it up against me and said something to her sister. They both nodded. Vaughn came up the road the week after the burial with a bag of oranges and a lot of opinions. Word had gone around that there was an American woman in Densio's house. He's the only other one out that way, and he was decent to me. He's been married 9 years and he lives in his wife's family's compound, but he's still a guest in that house. You can see it in how he asks before he sits down in a room he pays for. He told me what everything costs. He told me twice. He told me when one door closes, another one opens, and then he told me what a kilo of pork ought to run. You'll never be lonely in the Philippines, he said, and then anyway, they don't expect anything out of you yet. Wait till they do. Vaughn is the best cook on that street. People send children over for his adobo, and he doesn't eat it. I've watched him serve 6 people a meal that made them all go quiet, but then he ate crackers and instant coffee standing at the counter. I asked him once what he'd do if his wife's family ever told him to go. Well, they won't, he said, and he cut the crackers up into a bowl. The 40th day was coming. I had that black dress hanging on a nail in the green room, and my mother's gloves in my suitcase, and by then I thought I knew exactly what a funeral looked like. The 40th day is the end of the mourning. They put the black away, and you're done being sad where people can see you. Nobody had thought to mention it to the American. I got up at 5. I did my hair the way I used to do it, which I hadn't done in 6 weeks. I put on the black dress from the market. I put on a black straw hat I'd bought to keep the sun off, and I put on my mother's white gloves. I'd carried those gloves across the Pacific Ocean in a shoe bag to be married in. I didn't do anything to them. I just put them on my hands and buttoned them at the wrist. I came down that hall at 7 in the morning, and there were maybe 50 people in the yard. They were all in white, or yellow, or that pale blue. Some of the little girls had ribbons in. There were long tables under a tarp with food already going on them. A boy went by carrying a stack of plastic chairs on his head. They laughed. They laughed at me, out loud, all of them. One of the women made a noise like a gasp first, and then it went all the way around that yard. A woman I didn't know sat down on a step to get herself together. Natoy laughed so hard he made that squeaking sound teenage boys make. One of the aunties came over and touched my glove with one finger, like she was checking was it real. Then she lost it completely and had to walk off with her hand over her mouth. I stood on those steps in a black hat and felt the sweat start on the back of my neck. Suddenly, every face in that yard was pointed at me. Then I saw what I looked like. Oh, I thought, oh, you stupid woman. Then Ansing came out of that crowd and took me by the elbow. She marched me back down the hall into the back room and shut the door with her foot. She took the hat off my head. She undid the gloves, one wrist and then the other, and set them on the bed like they were worth something. My hands were no use to anybody at that point. She turned me around and got the zipper. I was out of that black dress in about a minute and into a blue thing with flowers on it that belonged to somebody's daughter. She didn't ask me anything. She didn't say anything about it either. That blouse didn't fit me. It pulled across the back. I had to hold my arms a certain way all day so I wouldn't pop the button between the shoulder blades. I wore it all day and into the dark. And the laughing didn't stop either. They didn't laugh and then get solemn and make it nice for me. It went on all day. They'd been walking on eggshells around me for 40 days. 3 separate people brought me a plate and then did the finger on the glove thing and cracked themselves up all over again. An uncle of theirs called me the Queen of England twice. For the first time in 6 weeks, I wasn't the sad thing in that yard, and my back hurt from it. That evening, they read the list again. Bigger crowd this time, out under the tarp, same man leading it. About 2/3 of the way in, my name. Said out loud after dark, in a yard in Batangas, with 40 people answering after it. And standing at the gate was a woman I'd never seen in my life. Gray travel top, bag still up on her shoulder. Listening to a stranger's American name being read out in her own father's list. She'd come in from Dubai that morning. Nobody in that house had thought to tell her about me, and by the time one of them worked up to it, she was already in the air. Popang, Densio's daughter from his first marriage. 12 years in Dubai doing home care for an old man in an apartment with the blinds kept shut. She has her father's hands, wide across the palm and the nails cut down short. I saw that at the gate before I saw her face. She couldn't get out of Dubai for the burial. She tried, but her employer is a family, and families are worse than companies about that. By the time it got straightened out, she'd missed her father going into the ground by better than a month. So she sat in an apartment in another country and looked at photographs of it on a phone. She was decent to me for about 4 hours, all through the eating and the tables coming down and the chairs going back over the fence to the neighbors. Then it was getting on toward midnight. The yard was empty and Ansing had gone to lie down. Popang and I were in that kitchen with the fluorescent tube buzzing, and she asked me, would I sit? I want to ask you some things, she said, and I'm going to ask them straight out. Everybody here is being polite with me. Polite is not the same thing as telling me. She asked me how long I'd known him. 3 years on the phone, I said, and 11 days in a room. Then, was I married to him? No. Then, was there any paper anywhere in the world with my name and her father's name on it together? I told her, there's one, it's in the box. His side is filled in. That's not a paper, she said. No. It's a form he started. It's not a paper. And here was a woman across a table asking me to produce my own name in writing, and I couldn't do it. She wasn't raising her voice. That was the worst of it. I was frightened of her, and I think it was because she was reasonable. Her hands were flat on that table, and she went through it in order, point by point. The house is family. The land under it has been family since her grandmother. The rings were bought with her father's money. He died before he handed them to anybody, so they're his, and they belong to whoever the law says they belong to. And that isn't me. I'm not calling you a thief, she said. Hear that part. I'm telling you where you stand, because nobody in this house will tell you. They'll just keep on feeding you. She was quiet a second. My father was 71, she said, and he was lonely and he had a house. Are you sure it was you he wanted? Or did he want somebody in the chair across from him? Any somebody. I didn't answer her, and I still haven't. Not really. The truth is, what I did next was childish. I told her that was fair. Twice, really. That's fair. That's fair. Then I went into the green room and packed my 2 suitcases at midnight. Folding things, matching up socks, like a crazy woman. Because she wasn't wrong about any of the facts. She was wrong about nothing. Blood is thicker than water. I had no answer that wasn't the word feelings, and you can't, put feelings on a table next to a land title. But she was wrong about one thing, and I don't know how I'd have said it at that table without sounding like a fool. The man went out and bought an electric kettle before he'd ever had me in the house. It's a kettle. That's all it is. I still think about it, though, more than I think about the house or the land or any of the rest of it. Ansing stood in that doorway the next morning and told me, this is your house. I told her it isn't, though. I shouldn't have said that to her. I said it anyway, and then I couldn't take it back. I just moved my suitcase to a rented room over a Lomi house on August 9th. But a week and a half after that, I couldn't stand up. The Lomi house is on a corner, and it's noisy from about 6 in the morning, maybe before. There's a tricycle stand on that same corner, so it's the noodles and the engines both going at once. Lomi is just thick noodle soup. They give it to you in a bowl about the size of a hubcap. The whole building smells like garlic and pork fat, and you stop smelling it after a week. My room had a window and a bed and a fan and a bathroom down the hall. For the first time since I landed, I had a key to something. Beggars can't be choosers. There was a calendar in there from a tire place, 2 years old, and I never took it down. I told Ansing I needed a little time to think. I told my sister back home on the phone that I had my own place now. She said good, in a voice that meant she was already thinking about my flight home. The fever started on a Thursday. I remember thinking it was something I ate, By Friday night, I was under a blanket in a country where I had never been cold, shaking so hard the headboard was tapping the wall. Nobody knew where I was. That was exactly what I'd taken that room for. My sister thought I was still at the house. 4 days like that are not dramatic. They're boring and frightening at the same time, really. You lie there and you think, well, the landlady's downstairs, only she doesn't come up except on the 9th for the rent. And the man next door I have never laid eyes on, not once. And I don't even know, is it a man, actually? You get up to the bathroom down the hall and you kind of go along the wall with your hand on it. You drink out of the faucet even though you know better. You sleep an hour and then you're awake. It's the same gray light. I got a little scared around the third night, I mean really scared, and then that wore off too. Somewhere in there I realized I hadn't eaten since Thursday, and then I sort of lost the thread of it again. And you think about it, if I go now, in this room, how long before anybody comes? 2 days. You get as far as the smell, and then you make yourself quit. I went down the list of who there was to call, and there wasn't any list. Nobody had my son's number. Not one person on that whole island. The truth is, I'd been alone 22 years, and I'd gotten pretty good at it, or I thought I had. You ever count up who there is to call? I don't recommend it. On the 4th morning, Nitoy came into town for feed for that rooster. He went past the Lomi house, and my shutter was still closed at 11 in the morning. That is the only reason I'm still around to tell it. A 16-year-old boy on a scooter noticed a shutter. He was probably just going by for the feed, and that's all it was. He didn't knock. He went and got Mingay, and Mingay got Petok, and the three of them came up those stairs. The landlady opened the door with her own key. I told them all to go home, which nobody did, and I somehow knew they wouldn't. The clinic in Lipa took blood. It was not dengue. It's the first thing everybody over there thinks, and you want it ruled out with a test instead of somebody's opinion. But it never got a name. They put me on a drip a couple hours, maybe more, with the bag hanging off a nail. Then the doctor said, "It's just a fever. Drink this much water, take these, come back Thursday." It didn't come to much. They gave me a paper with the numbers on it, and I put it in my purse, and I've still got it somewhere. But Petok paid it out of his pocket and wouldn't discuss it with me for weeks. They took me back to the house, not to the room. Petok carried the suitcase up past the motorcycle in the side yard, which has been under a blue tarp with a brick on it the whole time I've been in that house. Then he went to work. I woke up in that green bedroom on a Tuesday afternoon with the fan going. Onsing was in a chair by the door with a basin. And that's when I realized she'd moved my things back in without asking anybody. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept the whole way through. I said, "I'm sorry." She said, "Drink." That was the whole conversation. Popong came back to Lipa in the last week of August. It was most of a day before she spoke to me. She'd found the bill. Onsing keeps papers in a drawer under the rice cooker, and Popong was looking for something else, and there it was. The marble man in Lipa. 48,000 pesos for the marker on her father's grave, paid in full, and not by Onsing. I'd done it in the second week, back when I still had that feeling I had to buy my way into the room. The stone people wanted half up front, and I gave them all of it, but I couldn't think of anything else to do with myself. Popong put that bill down on the kitchen table. Not hard. She just put it down. She said, "Why?" I told her because it needed doing and I could. She asked did I want a receipt from her. Then, did I have any idea what it does to a person, finding out a stranger paid for her father's stone? The truth is, I hadn't thought about that for 1 second. I'd thought about the marble and whether the dates were right. She turned the bill over and got a pen out of her bag and wrote on the back of it while I talked. It was a relief to have somebody finally ask. She made me go through it. Food, when I eat outside the envelope. The phone, the pills for my thyroid, the tricycle when it's raining and my knees are bad, and the papers, because papers cost money in the Philippines, and there's a trip into the city for them, and it isn't free, and it isn't once. She wrote each one down, and I couldn't have told you the total before she did it for me. 260, she said. Some months, 300. Not a month where a tooth goes, and this year a tooth went. Back home, the association fee plus the February gas bill came to about what I spend on myself here in a whole month. Social Security pays me $1,320 a month. 31 years at a front window in Pennsylvania comes to that. I put 12,000 pesos into that house every month. She asked who counts it. Nobody counts it, I told her, and she told me that's the problem. It is not rent. Nobody will take rent from me, and I stopped offering after the second fight about it. It just goes in an envelope in the same drawer as the papers, and I don't know that anybody ever opens it. It buys rice and the electric and the water and about a third of what that family eats. And there's $61,000 sitting in a bank in Erie from an apartment I sold. I just told her the number. I watched her face do nothing at all when I said it. She wanted to know, was I poor? And I told her no. Not poor and not rich, and 69, and there's no more coming in after this. Popang listened to every word of it. Then she put the pen down and said something else. So you can leave, she said. You've got money and a passport and no husband and no papers. Every day you stay here, you're choosing it. That's why nobody in this house can relax around you. The truth is, I'd never thought of it as a thing I was doing to them. Somewhere in there, she asked me about his health. I told her he'd been off cigarettes 5 months, about the way he told it. She didn't say anything to that. She just looked at the table. And that's when I finally heard the other thing. 3 days before I flew, he said on the phone, "If I'm not there, you go with Sing." I thought he meant the traffic. I told him okay and asked what color the curtains were. He knew something was wrong in his head, but he told me the only way he knew how, which was to arrange it and not explain it. We didn't fix it. We sat in that kitchen until 2 in the morning, and we got maybe part way to fixed. Not even. She told me about the old man in Dubai whose diaper she changes, and that her father had never asked her about it in all those years. Not once. And that he'd told her about a woman in America exactly one time in a text message, 5 words long. 5 words. I've never seen it. She left for the airport before it was light. Nobody woke me. In February, the parish married 14 couples at once. They do it every year. The city helps with the papers, the parish does the ceremony, and it costs next to nothing. You need the papers, and you need to stand up there, and you need rings. Petok and Onsing's daughter had been together 23 years. 4 children, the oldest off working up north. All those years and a payment book on a tricycle, and they'd never been married. Never. It came up in that house a few times, but every time it turned into a joke, and the joke was always about money. They put their names in November, and they didn't tell me. I found out because Mingay can't hold anything. That shoebox had sat 7 months on the shelf in the plastic wardrobe under a folded towel. I'd just take it down maybe once a month and look at those 2 rings in their tissue. Then I'd put the lid back on. Popang was right that they weren't mine, but they weren't hers either, in any way that mattered. What's a woman in Dubai going to do with a ring that size? I took the woman's ring out, just the small one, the one that was cut for me. I gave it to Petok at the kitchen door on a Sunday afternoon in January. I did it badly, too. I didn't make a speech. I put it in his hand and said, "For the church," in February. Then I turned around and went in the house, because I could feel my face going and I have my pride. He didn't come after me. He sat out there about 20 minutes. I watched him from the kitchen window, and then I quit watching. He came in after and went to bed. But he's never said anything to me about that ring, before or since, and I've stopped expecting him to. February 14th, at San Sebastian, the cathedral in the middle of Lipa. 14 couples in one go. The women in white that mostly didn't fit because it was all borrowed. The men in barongs. I remember that, all those white shirts. The children standing up in the front rows in their good shoes. Onsing's daughter had a veil on, and her youngest waving at her from the pew. Then it came to the rings. Petok took that little gold band off the pillow with his thumb and his first finger. He held it out away from himself. Then he put it on her hand. It stuck. It stuck at the knuckle because she's worked with her hands since she was 14. Her hands are not the hands of a woman in Erie, Pennsylvania. He had to work it. Left, right, left. It took maybe 4 seconds, and it felt like an hour. Somebody behind me laughed. Then it went over. She made a fist to keep it there. But the priest was already moving on to the next couple. I was in the 4th row on the aisle. I flew across the world with 2 rings coming toward me in a shoebox, and I sat in a wooden pew and watched one of them go onto another woman's hand. I don't know what to call what I felt for those 4 seconds. It wasn't sad. That's the only part of it I'm sure about. I've still got the other one, his. It's in the box on the shelf with the form he filled his half of. I don't wear it on the chain, and I'm not going to. It'd be a kind of lie, I think. I am not a widow, and there's no word for what I am there. Not in English, and not in Tagalog. I'm not his wife, and I'm no relation to any of them, not by blood, whatever the word for that would be. The little kids call me Lola, which is grandmother, because that's what you call a woman my age, and it costs them nothing. Nitoy calls me Tita. Onsing still says Diane. But I have been in that house going on 2 years, and some nights I still lie in that green room and think, whose spare room is this? Popong and I aren't fixed. She called in March, 7 months after she left. It was about a mango tree at the back of the lot and whether it should come down. 4 minutes. She said what she called to say and asked was I well, and I told her I was, and she hung up. She hasn't once said my name on a phone call, but she called the house. 9 evenings of praying in the house when somebody goes. Pasiyam. I still can't follow a word of it. I've tried. I can order at the market. I can get through a whole conversation about the weather and the price of fish. But then the women start a rosary and I'm right back to moving my mouth. And what I miss isn't Christmas and it isn't my own kitchen. It's a certain kind of joke. In June, I said a thing in that yard about Mingay's iron, how it only works if you hold your mouth right. It landed in a silence. Patok's oldest girl said, "Ha," to be kind. The kind ha is worse than nothing. No, it isn't worse than nothing. I don't know what it is. It's the thing I notice is all on a bad afternoon. Charlene came for 18 days in October, my sister who cried on the phone and told me not to go. She sat in that yard and got bitten to pieces and ate everything put in front of her. She kept saying everything happens for a reason. She also said I'd told her the 31 years thing 4 times now. A week or so in, she said, "All right, what are you to these people? Just tell me what to say to my friends." And I said, "I'm the one who's here." She said, "That's not an answer." And I said, "No, it's not." It'll be 2 years in June. Nitoy's rooster died, and he took it hard. There's a new one in the crate that he says is better. I don't think it is. Rodney sent a box at Christmas with vitamins in it and a sweatshirt from a college he didn't go to. Vaughn's still up the road, cooking for people and eating standing up. Onsing's knee went bad, and she uses a cane on the stairs now, and she hides the cane when visitors come. Last Tuesday, a man came to the gate. She put the cane behind the door before she went out to him, and she stood the whole time he was there, on that bad knee. I watched it from the green room window. We did the year mass for Densio at the same cathedral. There were 9 of us in a building built for hundreds. Afterward, Onsing bought pandesal and we ate it in the car. The truth is, I was more use at that one than at the funeral. I knew where to stand. I knew when to sit down. Onsing didn't have to steer me by the elbow. But it was the first time I stood in a church in the Philippines and wasn't the problem in the room. I had it in my head that I was moving to a country. But I wasn't moving to a country. I was moving into a house where the praying is out loud, and no, that's not it either. There are people there. That's not it either, but it's what I've got. Nobody in that house owed me anything. They fed me anyway, and I still don't know what a person is supposed to do with that. I went over there to get married. He'd been dead since the afternoon by the time the plane came down. Onsing still gets my name wrong. I'd do it again on the same ticket. Have you ever gotten on a plane not knowing what would be waiting?